We got Frank Warren's pre-Christmas show taking place on Saturday at the Copper Box, headlined by Daniel Dubois versus Kyotaro Fujimoto. I probably just butchered his name there, but that's what he's called, the Japanese heavyweight who's 21-1. On the undercard, there is a fight I'm actually quite interested in. I'm not, the biggest follower of Liam Williams, but he's fighting Atlantes Fox. That's a guy who fought Demetrius Andrade. That might actually be Atlantes Fox's only loss, was to Demetrius Andrade. And one of the reasons I think that's an interesting fight is because Atlantes Fox is absolutely giant for not only just a middleweight, but a light middleweight as he was before. I mean, if you look at Atlantes Fox here, he used to be at 154, now he's at 160. He's 6'4". So very, very, very tall for the weight. And just going to be interesting to see how Liam Williams is able to, he's only 5'10" himself, and BoxRec heights are not always accurate, but I can assure you that Atlantes Fox is very, very tall. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Liam Williams copes with a guy this big. Not a massive puncher with that height, but very, very awkward to get to. And as I say, he's only got the one loss, and that was to Demetrius Andrade, who's obviously a very, very good fighter. Other than that, I mean, he hasn't been mixing in the best of company over the past year or so. Bruno Rome, Nick Brinson, Elvin Ayala. I'm not too familiar with these people here. And prior to the Andrade fight, it wasn't particularly strong either, let's be real. But he acquitted himself relatively well against Demetrius Andrade, although he did lose. He didn't do too badly. Lost the unanimous decision. Let's see how Liam Williams can cope with the guy. So yeah, I'm quite interested in that undercard fight there. It's not a bad little card before Christmas. Tommy Fury, now, he didn't have an extensive amateur background. He's obviously the younger brother of Tyson Fury, is trained by his dad, John. But he looks to be very athletically gifted. And when you've got a young fighter who comes from a fighting family and they're athletically gifted, you may want to keep an eye on him. It doesn't mean they're going to go on to be great, but there could be potential there. So he's athletically gifted, he's fast. So I'll be interested to see how Tommy Fury looks. The opponent at the moment is still TBA. You got Sonny Edwards on there, Lucian Reed. And as I say, top of the bill, Daniel Dubois versus Fujimoto. I have done a pre-fight video about this. How much can we really expect from Fujimoto? His one loss was by stoppage to Solomon Hermano, and that was back in 2012, very long time ago. Since then, he hasn't really fought anybody. He got a split decision win over Ishida, which I mentioned in my previous video about this fight, which is pretty shocking. Ishida was a light middleweight and middleweight, and he's getting split decision wins over him in 2015. And other than that, yeah, he's fought nobody. Now, he's a relatively short guy for a heavyweight these days, 6 feet tall, 73-inch reach. He's pretty sturdy in terms of his physique. Weighs, what do we want to say, the high 220s to the low 230s. So he looks pretty sturdy. And generally speaking, when it comes to Japanese fighters, they're usually brave. Very often tough as well, but even if they're not tough as in have really good chins, they're usually brave. So I'm expecting Fujimoto to try and have a go for as long as he's in there, but I'm not really expecting much. I have looked briefly at a couple of his fights. It looks very, very limited. I'm expecting Daniel Dubois to do the business without any kind of serious issues at all. But you never know. It is heavyweight boxing. Daniel Dubois is a guy who does tend to get caught when he's exchanging. He throws wide hooks a lot of the time. He's got long arms, throws these wide hooks, and you can catch him in between the hooks if you know what you're doing. But at the same time, he can catch you too, and that generally is curtains for you. When he starts catching you, he's a very heavy-handed young man. He's got good fitness. I know a lot of people were disappointed when he went the distance with Kevin Johnson a few fights back, but I was actually impressed because of the fact that he was able to keep up a good work rate for the full distance. I believe that was it 10 rounds? Yeah, it was 10 rounds against Kevin Johnson. I was impressed with his work rate there. So even though he didn't get the guy out of there, he showed that he can throw the punches, for the distance. So yeah, very much interested to see how Daniel Dubois' career progresses. A lot of people saying it's a disappointing opponent. Maybe, but it's another ranking fight. Hopefully in the new year, Frank Warren can get Daniel Dubois some, more meaningful fights, or, against opponents who we've heard of before, and opponents which will give kind of a measuring stick to tell us where Daniel Dubois is at. If he can get some fringe contenders or whatnot in there with him and work his way up the rankings. I mean, it could turn out to be a similar situation to what they had with Anthony Yarde, where they might not be able to, well, they could have got Anthony Yarde, I think, better opponents, but with Daniel Dubois, they might struggle to get him decent opponents because he doesn't bring a lot of viewers in. He doesn't sell that many tickets. And therefore, if a fringe contender or a former world champion is going to fight Dubois, they're going to be they're going to want to be offered good money. And if he's not selling the tickets, they're going to struggle to pay them the good money to entice them to come and take on such a dangerous young fighter as Dubois. So it could be a case where Frank Warren just keeps maneuvering him into certain ranking fights, and before you know it, he's mandatory for one of the major belts without really fighting anybody of note. And that'll be interesting to see him go in there as a mandatory against Fury, Wilder, AJ. Who knows? Maybe he'll be put into a final eliminator with somebody like a Joe Joyce, a Dylan White, Could be interesting. So, yeah, Dubois is slowly but surely making a believer out of me. I'm not going to say that he's going to go on to be the best heavyweight in the world just yet, but he's ticking the boxes slowly but surely for me. It's interesting, a lot of people compared Anthony Joshua to Frank Bruno, and they still do, which is bizarre to me because he doesn't fight anything like Bruno. Yes, he's muscular like Bruno was, but he's way more athletic than Bruno, has way more wrinkles to his game, and stylistically, as I say, he's nothing like Frank Bruno at all. Daniel Dubois, stylistically, is way more similar to Frank Bruno than Anthony Joshua ever was. And I'm not saying that to be, critical of Daniel Dubois. I'm just making an observation. The way Dubois stands, his stance, the way he fights, it's far more like Bruno because he's not as fast as AJ, Daniel Dubois. He's more like slow with his punches, more heavy-handed in clubbing, not as much snap on his shots as there is on AJ's punches. Okay, but maybe he's more heavy-handed than AJ because that's the thing that Frank Bruno always had, is he was a very heavy-handed guy. Not a lot of snap on the shots, not a lot of speed, but just a lot of weight behind him. So, yeah, reminds me of a Frank Bruno type style. I mean, he's almost like Frank Bruno with a hint of Riddick Bowe to his style. That's the way I would describe Daniel Dubois. It's kind of Frank Bruno with a tiny hint of Riddick Bowe in there, and if he wants to progress and get better and better, he needs to lean more towards the Riddick Bowe side of things than the Frank Bruno side of things. Riddick Bowe had faster hands than Dubois, and he was more fluid, but he had that physicality about him that Dubois has, where he could roughhouse people on the inside, where he could get hooks off and just bulldoze people. Riddick Bowe did have that. Okay, Frank Bruno, very, very clumsy on the inside. I mean, Dubois sometimes could look clumsy on the inside, but nowhere near as clumsy as Bruno on the inside. Bruno really couldn't fight inside at all. At all. Dubois does have some kind of inside game. Even though it's clunky, he does have some kind of inside game. And he leans on people and pushes people back. And he's more willing to get involved in a tear-up than Frank Bruno was. Frank Bruno was really a boxer. That's what Bruno was. Bruno always struggled when people got aggressive with him and physical with him. That's where he tended to struggle. But if you wanted to box with Frank Bruno, he was actually a really underrated boxer, truth be told. Dubois has that ability to box as well, as we saw against Nathan Gorman. But if you want to take it to Dubois, he'll happily oblige you. He doesn't seem to have that stylistic vulnerability to him that Bruno had, whereby when you attack him, he just is in sixes and sevens. Dubois seems far more receptive to being attacked and people engaging with him up close and in shootouts. So, yeah, going to be interesting anyway. Dubois versus Fujimoto. How many rounds does it go? I did a poll in my Facebook group the other day, and I think most people, that the most popular round was round 2. Some people were saying round 1, but a lot of people were saying round 2 for Fujimoto. It only lost 2 rounds in the eyes of many. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who do you think Dubois will fight in the new year? Who would you like to see him fight? And how good you think he can go on and be? Let me know, people. It's happening. I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.